What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all doing great today because we've got a ton to talk about. Bleach, Rebirth of Souls just got its latest update, version 1.30, and this one's got some really interesting stuff packed in. It's not one of those flashy updates that throws a bunch of new characters or flashy costumes at you, but it actually changes how the game feels moment to moment. If you've been putting hours into ranked matches, trying to figure out the new meta, or just feeling out how different characters handle since launch, this update is going to make you rethink some habits. So let's talk about what's new, what's changed, and how this patch is going to shake things up for both casual players and the hardcore ones grinding online every night. So first off, the big thing about this patch is the focus on system mechanics. Those little details that you might not notice at first, but completely change how fights flow once you start adapting. One of the most noticeable tweaks is how Vortex Reversal Action and Pursuit Flash Step now cancel faster. This is one of those changes that doesn't look dramatic on paper, but feels huge in practice. It means you can react and transition between offensive and defensive options much more smoothly. Those awkward half seconds where your character just seemed to hang in the air waiting for input are pretty much gone now, and it makes the whole combat rhythm feel tighter. You can press your advantage more confidently, especially in those moments where your opponent's trying to bait you into wasting a reversal or a flash step. Another adjustment that stood out is the chain reversal timing change. Before this update, it sometimes felt inconsistent, like the timing window wasn't quite there when you needed it. Now it actually triggers right after your opponent gets hit or guard stunned from the previous move. That means your follow-ups are cleaner, and you can chain reversals with more precision. It's one of those subtle quality of life tweaks that just makes the whole combat system feel smoother and more responsive. Now let's talk about the reversal gauge, or RG, which is kind of the soul of this update. The RG has been reworked in a way that really changes the pace of battle. Recovery rates now depend on what kind of move you're using, and spiritual pressure moves restore a fixed amount of gauge instead of scaling wildly like before. What this does is it gives more structure to resource management. You can't just spam specials or fish for parries to get your gauge back easily anymore. You actually have to think about when to commit to spiritual pressure moves because they're now more predictable in terms of gauge return. It's a smart change, honestly, because before, certain characters could manipulate the RG system a little too easily and swing the momentum of a match off one lucky exchange. Another interesting tweak that ties into that is how RG gain works when you're behind on souls, those Konpaku indicators that reflect your overall advantage or disadvantage in a match. Previously, the game tried to help players who were behind by giving them slightly faster RG gain to encourage comebacks. That's now toned down. You can still make comebacks, don't get me wrong, but you've got to work harder for them. You can't rely on the system to feed you free resources anymore. It's a subtle way of rewarding players who can maintain control of the pace, rather than relying on desperate reversal spam. Now, this one's going to affect a lot of players. Parry success duration have been shortened. That means the timing window is stricter. If you've been getting by with lazy parries or just throwing them out hoping to get lucky, those days are over. You're going to need press reads now. And that's honestly a good thing. Parrying should feel like a skill-based mechanic, not a get-out-of-jail card. With this change, matches feel more grounded, more honest, and the skill gap between good and great players widens just a bit more. They also made a cool adjustment to projectiles. After hitting an opponent, projectiles now slow down. It might sound like a weird thing to tweak, but it really helps balance out some zoning-heavy matchups. Before, if you got clipped by a projectile, some characters could stack pressure on you immediately, and basically keep looping momentum. Now, there's a brief window of breathing room. You can reposition or try to regain composure instead of getting stuck in endless projectile strings. It's a small change, but it makes ranged pressure feel less oppressive and a bit more tactical. Speaking of changes that will affect online players, ranked mode got a bit of attention too. The rating formula has been rebalanced to make progression more consistent. If you've been grinding ranked and felt like the point system was a little unfair or random, this is definitely a welcome adjustment. It should reward consistent performance and not punish you as harshly for close losses. Now, let's get into what everyone's really curious about, the character balance updates. These changes hit a handful of fan favorites, and honestly, they're mostly positive, balancing out some overtuned aspects and giving love to others who needed a bit more power. Starting with Ichigo, both his Bankai and final Getsuga Tensho forms have been adjusted. His combo window timing feels slightly different now, and there's a reduction in RG gain for some of his flashier special attacks. This keeps him from snowballing as hard once he gets momentum. Ichigo's always been that character who can overwhelm you once he gets rolling, so this tweak makes sense. He's still strong, but you'll need to manage his resources a bit more thoughtfully now. Renji got some smoother, normal animations and his attacks flow better into his special moves. The developers reduced some of the hit stun on his follow-up attacks, which keeps his combos more balanced. It makes him feel less stiff, especially in aerial engagements. Renji mains will probably love the smoother combo execution, but will need to adapt to the slightly different timing. Komamura saw adjustments to his armor frames. Some of his armored moves don't last quite as long, but he's a little safer after performing reversals. It's a fair trade-off. He still feels like that powerhouse tank character, but his armor won't carry him through bad reads anymore. It rewards smarter play instead of pure muscle. Yoruichi got some really fun adjustments too. Her air flash step routes are tighter now, and she recovers faster after using them. This gives her a better tempo in close combat and makes her aerial pressure more dynamic. For players who love fast, reactive playstyles, she's in a really good place after this patch. There were also a few smaller tweaks to Byakuya, Toshiro, and Uryu. These weren't major overhauls, more like fine-tuning animation speed, ranged consistency, and recovery frames. The kind of little changes that you only notice when you've got hundreds of matches under your belt, but they do make the gameplay feel more consistent. Outside of the balance tweaks, there was also a small story mode fix. Something about a presentation or transition issue that's been smoothed out. It's minor, but if you've been playing through the main story content, it should feel a bit more seamless now. They also threw in some general stability improvements and UI polish, just cleaning up the experience overall. What's really cool about this update is that it doesn't feel like a simple numbers patch. It actually changes how matches flow on a fundamental level. Fights feel snappier, and the system feels more rewarding for players who put effort into learning the mechanics. There's less randomness, fewer easy reversals, and more emphasis on reading your opponent and managing your resources. If you think about it, Bandai Namco and the Bleach Rebirth of Souls team are clearly paying attention to how the competitive community is playing. They're not just patching things because players complain. They're actually looking at what creates engaging, skill-based matches. This patch feels like a direct response to how high-level players were stretching the limits of RG management and reversal timing. The adjustments encourage more deliberate play, and that's always a good sign for a game that wants to have long-term competitive appeal. For casual players, the difference might not feel massive right away, but give it a few sessions and you'll start to notice how much smoother everything feels. Inputs connect more fluidly, defense feels more meaningful, and the pacing just feels better overall. If you're the kind of player who loves training mode, this update is a playground. You can spend hours testing new combo routes, figuring out how your main's timings have changed, and optimizing RG recovery now that the system is more predictable. Ichigo's routes feel different, Renji's combos have a new rhythm, and Yoruichi's aerial flow feels like it finally clicked into place. In Ranked, expect the first few days after the patch to be chaotic. Everyone's going to be testing new routes and experimenting with defense timing, especially since parries are stricter now. You'll probably run into people trying out weird reversal timings, or players who suddenly feel way stronger because they adapted faster to the new system. That's just part of the fun after a big balance patch. Those early weeks when everyone's trying to figure out what still works and what doesn't. Personally, I think this update is a strong sign of where the developers want to take the game. They're clearly not content with just surface-level tweaks. They're trying to refine the foundation so that Bleach Rebirth of Souls feels smoother, fairer, and more competitive.